Welcome back to this final part of Murder with Friends. Today we're talking about Jodi Arias, and where you're picking up, we're gonna be talking about her infamous trial. I'm joined again by Samantha Schacher. Sam, let's just cut to the chase here. So Jodi is arrested at her home July 15th. Again, really swift police work. She is extradited to Arizona September 5th, and she pleads not guilty September 11th. And then, blah, 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 we get to her trial. And this is where the nation becomes captivated, fascinated by her story and by her relationship with Travis Alexander. So could you outline what was the defense's position and what was the prosecution saying as they go into that first trial?
Well, the prosecution was all about the evidence, right? So the prosecution claimed that she killed Travis Alexander 3 times over in cold blood.
Mm-hmm. Premeditated,
whether it was out of jealousy, at the end of the day, it did not even matter. Like, she killed him 3 times over in cold blood, and this was from the very get-go, Juan Martinez the prosecutor made a very big point that this crime, this murder was so inhumane that it would warrant the death penalty. So from the very beginning, he put that on the table. So horrible murderer, deserves to get the death penalty, right? And that this was premeditated, and most likely that the reason why it was premeditated was because of this jealousy building up and this infatuation with Travis Alexander and not having him as her own anymore, and him going to Cabo without her, and her not being able to process the fact that he's taking another girl. So that was like the crux of it. And then you have the defense who, with the help of Jodi Arias, who took the stand for 18 days, really drilled home that this is somebody that's had abandonment issues. This is somebody that's always had terrible relationships. This is somebody that was taken advantage of by Travis Alexander, not only, and then we'll get to the abuse, but so they maligned his character. They don't see it that way. This was their defense, this is her defense, but from someone who knew all the facts, they are maligning his character, calling him an abuser, saying that she was domestically abused by him, that there were sometimes when they were having sex that she wasn't 100% consensual in the situation, that all she did was love him, and he continued to batter her down and lead her on, and it created this situation, this boiling pot where she finally exploded.
So not only do they malign Travis Alexander's character, what was very fascinating for me was they also altered Jodi Arias's character.
And her physicality.
Physically looks very different from how she looked in all the photos that would circulate with her and Travis when they were dating. When they were dating, she was a blonde and she dressed a certain way. I don't even think she looked necessarily promiscuous, although, and we'll get into how the media covered it, it did bother me that they sort of dressed her up as like some whore just because she had blonde hair and wore a bathing suit when she went swimming. But when she takes the stand, it does not look like the Jodi Arias that we see from photos of their dating history.
Right, and that is just pure strategy in the courtroom. We had a number of attorneys.
Is it effective though, Sam? Like, is it effective?
Apparently it is. Attorneys will go into a situation and they know what works for jurors and what doesn't. If you have someone on there and she ended up resembling her lawyer, which was so bizarre. Like, she had the same haircut as her lawyer. She dyed it a mousy brown. She would wear glasses. She had bangs. She would wear her court clothes, and she looked like a completely different person. And she looked unassuming. She didn't look like
her glasses looked like science goggles. It was so over the top what they made her wear in court.
Which she later sold on eBay, by the way. Terrible, terrible. But
of course she did.
Of course she did, with her artwork and all of that. But she had a big fan base, which is so disgusting to say out loud. But it is courtroom strategy. They want to make sure that they know that the prosecution is painting her as like this like black widow, manipulative. I'm going to use sex as my power, and if I don't get what I want, I'm going to kill you. And so there is this psychological image that we have in our minds about what that woman is, whether that's fair or not. We do have that, and a lot of the jurors might not be as empathetic or open-minded as you. So you do want to go against that physical, psychological trick where you present her to be very like mousy and innocent, and that's exactly what they did.
And that she was a victim of domestic violence, that had sort of reached her boiling point. And they said that when she dropped the camera, that Travis reprimanded her for dropping the camera.
And that there was a fight, yeah, because it was his new digital camera.
There was an altercation, and that she sort of snapped.
Right.
And what we see
and she had to run and go get the gun that was like hidden in his closet, like all this BS. So
right,
yeah.
And that she takes the stand for, as you said, 18 days, and all of a sudden, all these elaborate stories that we had heard when she was being interrogated by police are gone. She can't really remember anything about the attacks, not really. And you see that really frustrates the prosecution when during cross-examination, they'll ask her a question. She's like, I guess, I don't know, I can't remember, it's all a blur. And that's really frustrating because she can't even lie well.
In her mind, she thought that may work for the jurors because maybe they thought that she was under so much stress, you know, in that altercation, according to her defense, that she didn't remember all these details.
And they bring some experts to the stand that would testify to that effect, that would say,
there's so much with those experts, though.
There's a lot, but the defense did a good job with what they had. They had a mountain of physical evidence against them. They had this woman change her story so many times, and they worked with what they had. And they had some defense experts testify saying, yeah, it's possible. Have you ever, been fearing for your life? Did you remember it? A lot of people can say, I don't know, I've never been in that position before.
You had two therapists in general, two psychologists. I don't know what their clinically what their degrees were, but you had Le Violette said that she believed that she was abused by Travis Alexander. But throughout the case, and even after the case, we saw these unfavorable biases that came from Le Violette, that's her last name, with Jodi Arias. It was very incompetent, according to many experts, not even the prosecution, but to many experts, the way she handled that case with Jodi. So perhaps she was manipulated by Jodi, perhaps she liked Jodi. Jodi is very charming. And then you had the other psychiatrist or psychologist, I believe her name was Janine, but she is the one that diagnosed her with borderline personality disorder. Right. Again, not to excuse her actions at all, because you're still fully aware, but just to give context that this is somebody that's very unstable. So, Janine also said that without a doubt, this woman was not abused. This is not someone who is suffering from PTSD. So you have these conflicting theories on the stand. They get washed out in the end when you see the evidence. And when you see, again, when you see Jodi Arias lie after lie after lie and get caught in those lies and have all these different stories, and then you look at her history of pathological lying, that's when you can sit back and say, okay, this wasn't somebody that was so battered, so broken that she did just, end up defending herself because they had an altercation in a bathroom. That's not the case, because I know some people that watched maybe bits of the trial thought that that was the case and defended her without knowing all the facts.
Yeah, well,
and that's infuriating for someone like me who knew all the facts, and then I look and I talk to to Travis Alexander's family, who for 5 fucking years have been going through this and having to go to trial and see her face, the woman that murdered their brother, their son, 3 times over, like in such a horrific way, and then go on stand and malign him while he's 6 feet under the ground, not able to defend himself. That's disgusting.
Yeah, and let's go to a clip right now of Jodi getting grilled on the stand to give you guys an idea.
You fired the gun, you shot him in the head, and you killed him, right?
Objection, Your Honor.
Overruled. Right?
Yeah.
Arias claims she killed Alexander in self-defense, but Martinez spent time trying to convince the jury not to believe her.
It would have been impossible for you not to have the knife with you when the attack happened.
Using timestamps on photos taken before and after the attack, Martinez says, according to Arias' version of what happened, the attack only lasted 62 seconds, which included Arias running away from Alexander, grabbing the gun, and then stabbing him nearly 30 times.
If you didn't have the knife in your hand, you needed to go get it from somewhere, right?
I guess, I don't know.
No, there's no guessing here now.
I like that because the prosecution did an awesome job of just finding her in those lies and putting her in a corner and making her respond.
Yeah, he's amazing.
And before we get into sort of the sentencing and what's going on with her right now, before we get into the media's treatment of her, I think it's important to note that even though they were able to establish that Travis Alexander might have been deemed sexually deviant for his religion or for what was expected of a Mormon, that's not a crime.
Right.
And I really hated that we would see the defense, talking about sex for so long, because it was, there's no indication that it wasn't consensual. And even
if anything, there's indication that that was because there were so many phone calls and text messages
So
and
many.
80,000 emails, most of those emails sexually explicit, where they were talking about how they just had sex, and she was leading that conversation and can't wait for you to do this to me and do that to me, and it was consensual.
And even
it was
if,
consensual.
Even if the kinds of sex they were having were were unsettling for some people to hear and uncomfortable to hear in a courtroom setting, it's not criminal at all.
It's not
And so
criminal, and it doesn't constitute murder.
No, it doesn't.
Yes.
But with that being said, Sam, can you outline a little bit about how the convictioning and the conviction went and the sentencing, and where is Jodi Arias today, just in summation?
That's okay. In summation, that's tough because
that's a lot.
Yeah, because in 2013 you got the verdict, right?
Right.
And everybody, it was yes, this is somebody that murdered Travis Alexander.
Guilty.
So everyone was relieved. I remember the sisters hugging, Travis Alexander's family hugging, and we thought that this was the end of the road. Well, then after that, then you have to determine whether or not this is going to be a crime that will fit the bill that will warrant death penalty. So that came shortly after, and it did. Not everyone was there, and a couple of experts came, and they did deem it that this was cruel and heinous, and that this is warrant of the death penalty. So that came quickly after. So then we all had to wait for the actual sentencing phase. So that's another trial where they're just determining whether or not she gets life in prison without parole, or life in prison with a possibility of parole after 25 years, or the ultimate judgment, which is what Juan Martinez went after the entire time and what the family wanted, which was the death penalty. So after about a year, that trial finally took place, and they had a hung jury. And then guess what? 6 months later, another hung jury. So now you're looking at the sentencing trial from 2013 to 2015. Again, think about the family. They have to go in a courtroom and look at this murderer's face. They have to deal with this every day. They deal with questioning. They can't sleep. They're not eating. Many of them can't afford to live anymore. They're not working. They're in court every day. So really drawn out. And then in 2015, after the second hung jury, is when Judge Stevens stepped in and said, we're not going to do this again. And I'm declaring this a mistrial, but I'm going to sentence Jodi Arias. And she decided, because it was a hung jury on the death penalty, that was off the table with the mistrial. But then she got to determine whether it was life in prison without parole or parole after 25 years, and thank God she chose life in prison without parole. So Jodi's in there.
Jodi's in there. She will be spending the rest of her natural life in prison.
She's in prison. Apparently she's well liked. Apparently she's selling art on eBay. Apparently she's communicating with a number of different people, and maybe moved to a medium security or less security prison because of her good behavior. She paints her picture. There was a number of interviews she gave after the fact that she was going to do good by her sentence, meaning that perhaps she can go into prison and she can make sure that they use recycled this and recycled that, and they can do things for children. And she likes to paint herself as this godly martyr, no matter what position she's in.
And she has a lot of fans.
Yeah.
She has people that root for her. I couldn't believe it myself until I saw the websites online. There are people that genuinely sympathize with her and that feel as though, I think it's without a doubt, it's not a whodunit case. Everyone accepts she did it, but there are a lot of people that feel that we are punishing a victim, which is not how I feel, but it's important to.
Those are the people that have not read the facts, again, because I'm always, me, I'm always.
Those are people that are easily persuaded by her.
Or they didn't take the time to read all those documents. This is 5 years worth of documents. Thank God I got to read those documents as it progressed. I can't imagine having to brief myself on 5 years worth of documents. So you'll see this pattern of behavior, that this isn't somebody that was victimized and abused by Travis Alexander. Sure, she may have felt scorned. Sure, she wanted to be with him and he didn't want to be with her. We've all been in that position. I've been in that position where you don't get what you want sometimes in relationships, and that sucks. And maybe that person could be a shitty person.
Yeah, you don't drive to Arizona and kill someone.
Thank you. And I'm not saying Travis Alexander was a shitty person either, but being scorned does not vindicate you for murder.
No, but a big part of her story, now that she is behind bars, but during this trial, the media took to Jodi Arias unlike any case I have seen in recent memory. I would say even more than Casey Anthony, more than George Zimmerman. And I think that it speaks volumes as to what we as the American television market look for and how we consume our news, because everyone knew the details of what was going on with Jodi Arias. What do you think the media did right and the media did wrong when covering her trial?
Well, the media is responding to, the media did a lot of things wrong, but they're responding to the ratings. We did our best ratings during Jodi Arias, not during George Zimmerman, Trayvon Martin trial, not during Casey Anthony, not during, after some of these trials, we would just talk about hot topics, politics. None of that compared to our ratings during Jodi Arias. So the interest from the fact that the cameras were allowed in the courtroom is already, people wanna get this voyeuristic bird's eye view of what happens in a courtroom. But then when you learn the subject matter has a lot to do with deviant sex sells. People wanted to tune in. And then when you see that the person that is essentially up for murder is beautiful, by from what a lot of people describe her as, that is going to translate into ratings, and the media is going to respond to that. So they're letting the cameras play while people are watching. The media comes in afterwards to dissect it, but people were just watching the trial. And then, of course, they would tune in and we would all dissect it together.
And speaking of dissecting it together, I found a number of awesome clips of OG Sam Schacher covering the Jodi Arias trial. So let's go to a clip right now of Sam commenting on Lifetime coming out with a movie on the Jodi Arias trial. This is before, I believe they had selected a jury. Before jury selection?
It's all a blur.
It was an indelicate.
We covered it every day.
This is what I will say about the Jodi Arias movie that came out on Lifetime. It was definitely an indelicate timing of when it was released. Let's take a look at Sam Schacher's reaction.
Yeah, maybe they want a sequel. They know how much people love to watch this Jodi Arias show. I mean, it's incredible to me. You see it on social media. People are 100% drawn into this case, whether they're sympathetic to seeing justice for Travis Alexander or because they're just in it for the entertainment.
That's funny. Yeah, we spoke about it every day. So that was just another day in my life back then. But I was looking at the two attorneys next to me. That's what was cool to me. Like, I was surrounded by Lonnie Coombs, who was a fierce civil rights attorney here in Los Angeles, almost got the OJ case back in the 90s, because remember it was gonna go to Santa Monica. So I had Lonnie Coombs to one side of me, and then I have Mark, who's a high-powered attorney in Miami, and just being around these experts who know courtroom language and all of that, and I was just sharing my opinion. But it was, that was funny to see.
Well, I think that you also, from the coverage that I could tell that you were doing with Dr. Drew on HLN, something I admired about what you were saying is that you early on were sort of calling attention to the fact that people were viewing this as entertainment and it's not okay, it was a murder trial. And you were that voice in a lot of the discussions I saw of like, let's remember, Travis Alexander was brutally murdered in cold blood. It was premeditated. And we're getting caught up in some of the entertainment things. Lifetime is making a movie when Lifetime should not yet be making this shitty movie. Your shitty movies can wait until a little bit after some time has gone on. There are families that have been affected by this.
It was very insensitive, and the timing could not have been worse. You're
but also
absolutely right.
A little bit perfect for an insensitive, indelicate movie to come out about Jodi Arias, because she is just the fucking worst.
Yeah.
Even behind bars, you touch on that a little bit. And I want to go to a clip right now of Jodi Arias. This is her pleading to avoid the death penalty. And let's take a look at some of the arguments she makes.
Whatever happens, I'm just going to take it and deal with it.
You've said that sort of thing a lot before, including right after you were arrested. You said, my goodness, if I did something this horrible to Travis, I would beg for the death penalty.
Right.
You did it, so what changed?
My family changed my mind.
Some of Arias' last words to the jury were downright bizarre. She argued for life in prison by essentially presenting a political platform for the rest of her life behind bars.
There are many things I can do to affect positive change and contribute in a meaningful way. In prison, there are programs I can start and people I can help.
She almost sounded like she was running for student council president. She told the jury she wanted to start a recycling program in prison, a book club, Spanish lessons for other inmates.
This is the t-shirt.
She was kind enough to bring a sample of the t-shirt she designed to raise money for domestic violence victims. She wants to keep selling those.
That pisses me off so much. Like in the beginning, we're all laughing and chuckling because yeah, you just see the narcissism of her painting this picture that she's gonna go into jail and she's gonna make a difference. But then her holding up that survivor t-shirt, still using that, because knowing that there is a fan base that believes that she is a survivor, when the real victim here, the real victim of the abuse and the violence is Travis Alexander. You're the perpetrator, you're the murderer, and you're the one holding up the survivor t-shirt, and you're gonna say that's gonna benefit victims of domestic violence. That to me,
yeah, it's egregious narcissism.
I can't with her. I can't.
And here's the thing, Sam. Now that we're removed from her case with a couple years, we played right into her hand. And she knew that, sex sells, and she was able to sell her story because of all the sex. She was on stand for 18 days.
She loved being on stand.
But the American people, we got duped. We were the ones that fell for the whole thing. I mean, even though she was convicted, she still is, thriving behind bars. She still has these fans that adore her and that believe her because she was able to lie well enough and about the right things that we gave her. Some people gave her that sort of sympathy, and that she became this odd character. We forget that she is a brutal murderer. She's now just sort of a Black Widow character that's very fascinating.
True. No, you're hitting the nail on the head.
And it makes me frustrated because she played so many people, and she continues to do so even from behind bars.
She's a master manipulator. This is someone, I'm not complimenting her when I say that she's brilliant. She really is. She's smart, and her IQ, whatever it was that was determined in court, showcased that. And she's been manipulating people based on her history, based on the documents, based on the interview. She's been manipulating people her whole life, and she's damn good at it. And as long as her ego is being fed, I think she's okay. So yes, I'm glad that she's behind bars, and I'm glad that her verdict was guilty. But you are absolutely right that she's being fulfilled behind bars because she has manipulated everyone to the point, well, not everyone, but a group of people that are feeding her ego while she is still behind bars. So, yeah.
All right, guys, that was the Jodi Arias trial and case and story. We want to hear from you in the comments section below. Had you heard about Jodi Arias before? I know this was a pretty US heavy story. Don't forget to subscribe to this channel, and we'll see you next time on Murder with Friends.